So I first got into Naruto back in the year 2017, when I had just basically moved into a new neighborhood. I was switching high schools, and it was my second anime ever, my first being, of course, Dragon Ball Z. And so a lot of the people that I began befriending in this neighborhood and in the new high school where I was going to were huge Naruto fans. And at first, I wasn't really captivated by it, but after a few episodes, we had finally reached the Pain versus Naruto fight. Of course, they had been watching the series for a little bit, and I kind of came in and I just joined the group. And luckily, when I hopped into the group was when Pain was going over his cycle of hatred speech. And so, I was instantly hooked. I went home and I started watching all of Naruto, and I did my best to look at what episodes were fillers, that way I could skip them, but I had caught up basically on all of Naruto, and this basically happened right when Boruto was starting. I think Boruto already had like 10 episodes out, but I'll rant about that steaming pile of garbage some other day. And so in this video, I kind of want to talk about my overall thoughts on Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, what I love so much about the entire series really, and of course some criticisms that I have about it, because as I've said before, no anime and no manga is perfect. So I'll kind of be switching here and there, giving some praises I have of the series, and then some criticisms as they kind of pop up in my head. And the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to praising Naruto is the phenomenal villains. Naruto has some of the most impressive villains in manga that I've seen. Some of the most standout villains also, along with One Piece that also does a great job of having many outstanding villains. But in Naruto, of course, we have Madara, Obito, who's my favorite villain, but I know he's far from the best, Orochimaru, Danzo was a good villain. Every single member of the Akatsuki was pretty much standout, my favorites being, of course, Itachi, Kakazu, Deidara, and Hidan. Oh, and also Sasori. Sasori's a boss. And I can't forget Kisame. I have to mention Kisame. No one ever mentions him. And of course, the person who I think to be easily the best villain in the entire series, and one of the best villains, period, I've ever read, and that's Pain or Nagato. I think another praise that I have to give into Naruto, and it's one of the things that captivated me about the series, was all of the standout characters, period, not just the villains. Now, I'll get into one of the criticisms later about Naruto having all of these standout characters that ends up kind of being a double-edged sword, but Naruto presented me early on with a lot of characters that I ended up learning to love a lot. Shikamaru, Rock Lee, even Gaara, he was an amazing villain, and then he had some of the best development in the entire series. Neji was super cool, but I never was a big Neji fan from the start, but I can understand why people like this character a lot. And then we have awesome characters like My Guy. Kakashi's one of the best characters in the series. Jiraiya is amazing. You get the point. Naruto just has so many just amazing characters that you learn to love. But before I get into complimenting Naruto a little bit more, this is where Naruto's biggest flaw kind of comes in. I think Kishimoto was extremely ambitious, and he presented all of these characters that you learn to love and that could honestly carry a lot of the story. Rock Lee, back in the Chunin exams, was protagonist level material, but as the story progresses, and more so Naruto and Sasuke, how they progress a ton in power, a lot of the other characters become irrelevant, and they're not really given enough progression to keep up with the two main characters being Naruto and Sasuke. And look, I understand, side characters are side characters, but a lot of the Naruto characters that, again, we loved way back in part 1 ended up getting done really dirty in Shippuden, and I feel like it's unfair to throw all of the blame on Shippuden when they weren't really given too much development in part 1 either, with the exception of maybe Gaara, Rock Lee, and Neji. And so there was so much potential with these characters, and of course the biggest one I think most Naruto fans would agree with was Rock Lee, or probably Neji. It's in between those two, but I'd pick Rock Lee, and it just wasn't fulfilled. And so Naruto kind of gets a bad rap for having poor character treatment, and it's true, I would agree with that criticism. There definitely could have been better decisions made along the line. In fact, if the story of Naruto was extended longer so those characters could get said progression, or if the war arc was done a lot better, then I think we would have ended a lot happier with these characters. So that would definitely be one of the criticisms I have with Naruto, is that even though the cast of characters is super lovable for the most part, it is kind of sad how these characters become extremely irrelevant near the end. And I think really part of what made it so frustrating, and going back a little bit to what I said earlier, was one of the strengths of Naruto, and it's shown within all of these good side characters, is the philosophy Naruto does have. There were so many lessons and lectures and just different philosophies I learned from these characters. And look, I don't want to keep pointing to Rock Lee, but Rock Lee and his lecture about hard work, I know there are other characters, Zoro from One Piece also does this great, but for me, Rock Lee, who's like my third favorite character in the series, that whole message of hard work just touched a real emotional chord, and Naruto was really good at doing that as well. It was really good at touching emotional chords with these characters that you could really relate to at times. And for me, outside of Rock Lee, it was usually the villain characters, hence why Obito's my favorite and also why I'm the masked man. Naruto also did a really good job at times of going back into the past and building this lore with characters such as Tobirama, Hashirama, and then Madara, of course. The series did have solid world building, history building. It really did feel like a complete story. It had every component at the time that I needed and wanted for me to kind of be, if you will, put into the world of Naruto, and it feel much stronger than other things I had watched later on. And so the only criticisms I would have with Naruto at times when it comes to its history building and kind of getting back into the past and creating all of this lore is what later on we suffer in the war arc again, which is the plot holes. And I think the biggest issue when it came to the plot holes was when there was usually some power boost involved. It usually wasn't anything just pure narrative, but it was something when it was like, oh, we need this character to get stronger, let's give him this power boost, but that power boost then would compromise the narrative. I think the only other side thing I really need to get into before talking about the whole dynamic with Naruto and Sasuke, which is the driving force of the series, I would have to say Naruto has some of the best fights ever. Naruto consistently has like B to S tier level fights on a consistent and regular basis. Like, there are very few other things that I have read that do and have such amazing fight. Honestly, I don't think Naruto gets enough credit for that at times. Naruto's choreography and just creativity within its fight scenes is almost second to none. Of course, my favorite fight being Kakashi versus Obito, of course both Naruto versus Sasuke fights, the two major ones at least, and Rock Lee versus Gaara, which is my second to third favorite fight in the entire series. But now that I've gotten most of the side things out of the way, now I want to kind of get into the two main characters of the series, and that's Naruto and Sasuke. And so to kind of wrap up the video better, I'll leave Naruto for later, and let me address Sasuke really quick. I'm gonna be completely honest, I hated Sasuke's character at first, and I mean I could not stand it at all. But when I rewatched the series, and then I read Naruto, and then I watched some things again, and then I saw some videos done by Swag Kage analyzing Sasuke's character, I learned to really appreciate Sasuke as a character. Now, even though his personality still rubs me the wrong way, I think people again need to make the clear distinction of not liking a character versus denying its narrative genius. And that's something that really frustrated me about the Naruto fanbase when I first started YouTube, and it's so weird to me. It's like Sasuke is one of your best written characters. He honestly goes through some of the best development throughout the entire series, but yet y'all crap on him half of the time, or at least a good portion of the fanbase does. I get it, Sasuke is written for you to detest him. He's like a punk, emo jerk, and unless you're like that as a person, you're probably not going to relate. Was it done perfectly? No. I understand. Again, I perfectly understand not liking Sasuke as a person, but the dynamic written between him and Itachi and him and Naruto, my opinion, was brilliant. If anything, it wasn't necessarily Sasuke's character that annoyed me, it was everybody else's treatment towards him, especially when it comes to the character of Sakura. And let me just get her out of the way. The thing is with Sakura, and look, I'm not going to go to the whole useless meme, because that thing should be dead by now. She's kind of killing it in Boruto. Like, it took her long enough, but she is an extremely powerful character now. She was poorly written, and that's the facts. Like, that's usually most of the comments back then when I did Naruto videos. That's the way they would excuse her. They were like, oh, Kishimoto wrote her poorly. It's not her fault. Wait, what? Like, you get what I mean? She was just a poorly written character, and she was just extremely unlikable. Hinata's more of a likable character, but she wasn't even written that well either. Overall, Naruto's romantic narratives were not its strong point, is what I'm getting at here really quickly. But going back to Sasuke, again, Sasuke is one of the best written characters in the series. Seeing how he started off versus him now as an adult is amazing. Currently, my favorite version of Sasuke is adult Sasuke, since he's kind of the final product. But I really wanted to get this Sasuke thing off of my chest, because it's like when the fanbase itself kind of dumps on its second most important character and one of its best written characters, then how can they really defend themselves when they want to kind of, you know, promote Naruto and say it's good? You're just gonna give other people who are gonna try and diss Naruto weapons and memes to use when they haven't even seen the series. Personally, I think the frustration with Uchiha characters in general is usually the whole versus battle thing. I know the whole debate power scale thing is big within the Naruto community, and I personally don't get myself involved in that for obvious reasons. I just think it kind of takes away from the whole narrative importance of the series when everybody's just consumed about who can beat who in a fight. But you know, if you do that, cool, it's just not my cup of tea. And so Sasuke's dynamic with Itachi, as I said, was brilliant, and his dynamic with Naruto was also phenomenal. However, I could point to many other dualities in other mangas that do it kind of better. Gon and Meruem, and of course Guts and Griffith, you have Johann Liebert and Dr. Tenma. But now that I kind of got my thoughts on Sasuke out of the way, I need to now address the main character, Naruto. Okay, here's here's the thing when it comes to Naruto. Naruto's thing from underdog to Hokage is one of my favorite stories ever. He really did go far, right? It's kind of like with Luffy in One Piece, where he started with no crew, and now he's one of the most wanted pirates in the world. Naruto does progress, but one of my criticisms about Naruto's character is that many of the things that made him special in the beginning definitely gets thrown out the window later. And this is coming from a huge Naruto fan. I love Naruto, but we can't pretend like the whole underdog shtick was ruined kind of early on, but it was really exposed later. Here's what I'm getting at. Now, first of all, I'm not going to do what everyone else does when they instantly go and address the Nine Tails, because again, the whole purpose of the Nine Tails was the social dilemma it caused between Naruto and everybody else in the village. However, they do have a point when they say the Nine Tails came in clutch for him many times early on throughout the series. Did Naruto still have to work hard? Yes, he did. But then again, when we had a character like Rock Lee, who seemed to be a much more better underdog written than Naruto, it was kind of like meh. But my biggest issue when it came to Naruto being an underdog, and some of the things that get brought up later, is, well, Naruto's supposed to be this underdog who can't be good at jutsu, and his whole fight against Neji was to prove that somebody doesn't have to be born a genius. That hard work can beat talent, essentially. That's what he was getting at. But then we find out Naruto's an Uzumaki, and the Uzumakis are one of the most powerful clans in history. His father is the 4th Hokage, Minato, and look, I know his dad was dead, but still, that blood is in his veins. What else? Again, he has the Nine Tails within him, which is something, again, you could go back and forth on, but it is the most powerful tailed beast. And then what really kind of ruined it all for me is when we find out Naruto is a reincarnation of Ashura. Ashura is one of the most powerful shinobi in the history of Naruto. And so him and Sasuke are supposed to be the reincarnation of the two brothers. And so we have that image where we see the two brothers, Ashura and Indra, and then we see Hashirama and Madara, and so now we see Naruto and Sasuke. And so Naruto, when we put all of that together, was he really an underdog? Like, I get it. He was set as an underdog because all of the obstacles he had to face, he was usually the least favored in them. I get that. But it was like, I get it, Naruto's great, I love his character, but the whole underdog thing has been done better by other characters. That's just some criticisms I have on his character. Also, another minor thing that has always bothered me, but I also kind of find a little bit funny, and I pointed at it earlier with the whole Hinata thing, was the fact that Hinata told Naruto, I love you, but then he completely forgot about that. Bro, if the baddest girl in the village told me I love you, that would have been the first thing I brought up after the fight. Like honestly. Like, I'm in the hospital bed, and she's like, oh, are you fine? Did you beat pain? I'm gonna be like, girl, that don't matter. Repeat what you told me earlier before you got your behind tossed like a ragdoll. And so despite some of the criticisms I just brought up and a good amount about Naruto's character, I still love the entire series. Again, I just had to bring up a lot of the criticisms because I don't think it's fair for me to just talk about how much I love Naruto and thanking it before I kind of point some of the things it did mess up on. And so even though Naruto's whole underdog role wasn't written perfectly, I still learned about perseverance and caring about others, especially your friends, along that journey. With Rock Lee, I learned how much hard work is important. With Sasuke, I learned again the importance of valuing your comrades and not living your life based on vengeance and hatred. You also kind of learned that with Pain, Obito, and Madara, characters who kind of give in to hatred and despair, and they learned that that's not the way you should go about it in the end anyway. It's already been 3 years since I've gone into Naruto, but honestly that series has inspired me so much. And I think that's what really matters when it comes to these stories down the line. Reading One Piece now, One Piece has also inspired me greatly, but I don't think it's touched me as much as Naruto did. But that's just me, you know? And so hopefully you get the message of this video. Even though, again, I did bring up a good amount of criticisms because they need to be brought up in my opinion, I still love this series a ton and it has a lot of positives about it. And this doesn't just apply to Naruto, if not it applies to almost every manga, especially if they're like popular, if it's like an anime or manga that's super big and all of that, is a lot of people like to crap on it based off of memes they've heard without ever really watching it or reading it. But Naruto really helped me kind of learn and pick up on these philosophies that ended up making it easier for me to catch them in other mangas like Berserk, and Naruto, honestly, like I said, has inspired me in so many ways. So thank you Kishimoto for writing this amazing story. My channel I would not have started this channel if I had never gotten into Naruto. Are there things that I have above Naruto and that I think are better than Naruto overall as a series? Yes. But there are also a good amount of things that are worse within the shonen genre. But yeah, I might start doing some more Naruto content, kind of breaking down individual characters. I definitely have fun doing that again, maybe get some people to collab on with it. And if you are new to the channel, again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the bell notifications, that way you're notified when a new video pops up on some of your favorite content. As always, this has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.